Good morning and good afternoon, everyone who's joined us today. We're here to hear from Roy Hill how they've leveraged their recent HRIS integration to create a more diverse workforce. My name is Yvonne Sims and I'm the Head of Client Success here at LiveHire, and I've been working closely with Roy Hill for the last 12 to 18 months. We're very delighted to have Jon Bowker and Sam Castle representing the recruitment team from Roy Hill today to talk about their experience. A bit of an intro into Jon. He's the head of recruitment at Roy Hill. Jon's career spans over 20 years in human resources. He's been a passionate advocate for diversity and ethics in recruitment, and is constantly seeking out new and innovative ways of using technology and automation to source exceptional talent. He's been known to go against industry trends and isn't afraid of speaking the truth. Jon is also proud to be a mentor with the Australian Indigenous Education Foundation, which provides mentoring and career support to Indigenous students in high schools across Australia. Welcome, Jon.
Thank you.
We also have Sam Castle joining us, who's the recruitment advisor here at Roy Hill. Sam has been recruiting in Perth for over 13 years, beginning her career as an agency recruiter. She then moved into internal recruitment within mining and resources. Sam's experience has seen her be a search specialist for RPO across volume recruitment and blue-collar trade recruitment to HR, technical, projects, IT and executive recruitment. So certainly a diverse background there. Throughout her career, Sam has also prioritised the candidate experience, and she believes that building relationships based on trust and best practice has ensured her success. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you.
Just a quick rundown of our agenda today. In terms of some housekeeping, everyone will be on mute. There is a question window for you to type in any questions you have throughout the session, and we'll have some time at the end to answer as many of those questions as we can. If we don't get to them all, we can take them offline and answer those separately. We'll be running through a bit of an introduction into who Roy Hill is as a business. We'll spend some time on a Q&A session, which will run for about 30 minutes with both Jon and Sam, and then we'll take some questions from the audience. So thank you for joining us, and we'll get started. So Jon, for the benefit of the audience, could you give us a bit of a history into Roy Hill and the Roy Hill business?
Sure. Thanks, Yvonne. So Roy Hill, for those who don't know, is basically a mining company. If you think about Rio, BHP and FMG mining iron ore in the Pilbara, Roy Hill is one of those players. We now have over 2,000 workers up in the business. Majority of those are FIFO up in the Pilbara. Roy Hill's been in production now for a couple of years after a 3 or 4 year construction phase. So we've recently done that transition from being a construction project through to now being fully in production. Essentially we're 70% majority owned by Hancock Prospecting.
Excellent, thank you. So in regards to recruitment, can you give us an overview of when you started? What were some of the main problems Roy Hill was seeing as a result of the previous recruitment process?
Yeah, so the main issues that we looked at, Yvonne, were really around multiple things: recruiter experience mainly, and candidate experience. So we found that it was a timely process to go through and assess the number of applications that Roy Hill were receiving. I think it was in excess of about 15,000 applications per year. And also just the time it took to then mobilise talent. So just that time process of recruiters having to sift through and go through numerous online advertisements and hundreds of responses, and that was a lengthy process. Also, we had a desire to increase our diversity. So at the time, we were roughly about 18% female employees in the organisation, which is on par with the WA resources sector, but certainly not kind of leading in that way.
Thank you. And how did you initially try and fix these issues?
Yes, we looked at a few things. We obviously looked at increasing our spend on branding and how we could continue to attract better quality candidates. We did need to, at a certain point in time, add more resources to the team as we were ramping up our production efforts. So we went through quite large recruitment drives where we needed some more resources. So they were some of the sort of the quick fixes that we put in place, but we knew that at the end of the day, from an ongoing perspective, we needed to look at a solution that made it more effective and efficient for both candidates and our recruiters.
Okay, and then at a high level, how would you say it was impacting your business or the bottom line?
Yeah, so it impacts it in quite a significant way in the mining industry. So when you have things like a long extended period of time to hire people, you basically don't have a person in the role performing the role. And when you don't have someone performing in that role in a mining organisation, that accounts to or equates to poor or low productivity or productivity losses. And if you don't have machines operating or you don't have work being done in the mining sector, it can cost you literally millions in loss of productivity. So we also found it as well that we were trying to rush that kind of hiring process. We perhaps made some errors in the quality of hires at that time as well. There was also some frustrations from both candidates and recruiters that obviously then impacts a little bit negatively on your overall employment brand.
Excellent. Now onto the candidate experience. Prior to implementing LiveHire back in 2017, what issues were you seeing with your candidate experience?
Yeah, so from a candidate experience perspective, it was really around a couple of things. The interface that candidates were initially going through was a SuccessFactors interface. It wasn't, I guess, the most or the latest kind of version that candidates typically go through to apply for a role. The system and interface looked quite outdated and operated in quite a clunky way. And also just candidates applying for roles and not really hearing back. We have a process here where we've got a lot of bulk positions to fill, and when you advertise in a bulk way, we found that it took us a very long period of time to go through those and respond to people.
And then how did this impact your business?
So from that perspective, the impact for us was just around that negative employment experience and that employment brand, and getting the right person in the role at the right time. Was really critical for us, particularly through ramp up. As we were ramping up, we went from literally a few hundred employees to a couple of thousand. And over the last year or two, we've hired roughly about 1,000 people each year. So it's been a pretty significant ramp up that if we didn't have this particular system in place, it wouldn't have been as effective.
Okay. Now, Sam, a question for you. What kind of response were you seeing from candidates?
I think that when we were just using our ATS before we had integrated with LiveHire, we was just seeing a lot of frustration from candidates. Just, referencing back to what Jon said around applying over and over again to what amounts to the same advert, it can get incredibly frustrating. And obviously we have unique challenges with candidates that themselves might work remotely. It is very difficult to contact them via a phone call, although I think most recruiters will relate to the difficulty of trying to contact candidates by phone. It's not the most private conversation to have, and people are at work during the day. It's very difficult for them to either answer your call or even to get back to you at a time when you're still at your desk. And so, yeah, I think we were just seeing a lot of frustration, and as Jon said, I think it was negatively affecting our brand because we just didn't have that instant way of communicating with them.
Okay, thank you. Now, I'm sure the audience would love to know what you've been doing to improve the candidate experience.
Yeah, so as part of the technology solution and the integration with SuccessFactors and LiveHire, we made a very deliberate call to pretty much cut the recruitment process in half and implement the LiveHire talent community at the front end of our solution, so that everything that the candidate experienced, look, feel, touch, etc., was all through a LiveHire process. And then the recruiters also obviously shortlisting, screening, and operating in that space. Everything, I guess, is mirrored over into SuccessFactors. So everything we do in LiveHire, the information, the status flows, the changes in candidate statuses, etc., are mirrored into the SuccessFactors. And then we operate SuccessFactors in the back end from the interview point onwards, so that our hiring managers weren't impacted. So hiring managers are still using the SuccessFactors module, and we're still onboarding people through SuccessFactors and into SAP at the back end of an offer process. So what we found is that candidate experience was really enhanced at the front end.
Okay, great. And what impact does the interface and the instant communication that you have with candidates have on their experience? How have you found that?
I mean, it's just much improved. So, speaking from personal experience, I think all the recruiters out there will understand that you have multiple times during a recruitment process where you need to have contact with that candidate and you need to give them some information or you need to ask them a question. And for them to be able to receive my messages via text, it really has been job changing. Everything gets done more quickly. Your candidate feels more secure in the process because you can constantly be in touch. And I think as well, using one interface for them, it is very user friendly, and so the process just becomes easier. It's just easier, and those people feel like they have a point of contact, which is what everybody wants. Everybody just wants a bit of reassurance that I'm there and I'm listening.
And have you had any indirect or direct feedback from candidates over the past 12 months?
I mean, yeah, I have had feedback around the fact that, for example, with LiveHire, you can bulk text message candidates and let them know, for example, my hiring manager is still shortlisting. So that's why you haven't heard from me yet. And we find that we get, a huge response from candidates when we do send out messages like that, because again, they've just had that touch point. It's much easier for us to keep them up to date, and it's much easier for them to be kept up to date.
Excellent. Now, just on the screen, we've just popped up some data that we've gathered in terms of what Roy Hill has achieved in regards to the candidate experience. Jon, can you talk us through some of these data points?
Yeah, so basically, look, we have a concerted effort to get back in touch with every candidate that applies or raises their hand to want to work for Roy Hill. That unsuccessful notifications, obviously there's still some candidates that have to be notified that are still in the process, that are still going through with their application at the moment, but the response rate is really, really strong, a lot more than what we perhaps had previously done, where we know from candidate feedback perspective, they've told us in the past with our previous ATS that they just weren't hearing back from us. And that's because they were just getting lost in the system. And the response time as well, there's still candidates that do respond to us from a messaging perspective after a day or two. On average, though, when you take into account that a fair few respond within minutes or hours, under an hour response rate is very good. And I think that's improving as we go and as candidates get used to the technology and the way of work that we've put in place.
And talk to us about that job invite acceptance rate. This is for people who have been invited out of your community proactively by the recruiter to apply for a job? Yeah,
so basically we find them in our talent community and we can send them job invites to apply for positions that might be of interest to them. and we've been really happy with the response rate so far since launching. And as you can see, then the number of messages that we're sending from candidates, I think that's growing at a rapid rate. It's almost, I think now that we're up to we've gone beyond full integration with the system. The recruiters are now sending out literally, thousands a month now.
Yep, wonderful. How important do you think it is for recruiters or hiring managers to apply for a role within their organisations so that they can really understand what their recruitment process is like?
Yeah, look, it's an interesting question, actually. I think it's important that they have a look at the process and they understand the process from the get-go, so that they design and build a process that they believe is going to be the most effective for them and their candidates. I actually think probably a better way of going about it is having experience with the likes of the Candidate Experience Awards run by the Talent Board. We've recently been involved in that process, and I think it's probably more important these days to get feedback, as scary as it might be, getting feedback from candidates, from all candidates that are going through and applying for roles in your organisation, including the ones that don't get jobs, that get declined. It's good to hear from them and give them a say and give them and listen to their feedback.
Absolutely, and good luck with your submission.
Thanks.
So now the recruiter experience. Obviously, thank you for sharing the candidate side of things. We'd love to hear a little bit more about what your recruiters have been experienced since implementing LiveHire. So to kick us off, what were some of the main problems the recruitment team was seeing before the implementation of this solution?
Yeah, before I hand it over to Sam for her thoughts and views, I think the main ones was just really the high volume of applications to sort through, and sorting through those applications. And in a traditional ATS design is literally it's a tick or cross kind of process, and when you decline a candidate, they kind of go into that never. And the other thing as well, from a recruiter perspective, is just very limited way of being able to visualize talent pools, particularly from a diversity perspective. But being able to actually see talent pools with live data that actually has up-to-date candidate information, that doesn't have candidate information that's 2 or 3 years old, because we know that our candidates are updating their profiles, and we can also ask our candidates to keep their profiles up to date, and they are doing that because it's an easy system to do it on.
Sam, did you have anything else to add?
And I was going to say as well, I think previously we were jumping between systems a lot, and that does take up a lot of your time. And with regards to talent pools, I mean, if you think about the ATS previously, we had that talent community in there, but we didn't have an easy sort of user-friendly way of accessing and searching our own, what is effectively our own database. And as Jon said, it wasn't up to date. And so with once we have this, we now have a quick and easy way to talent pool people. And so what we found is, it reduces the need to advertise. It reduces the need to then go through 200 applications. You can effectively apply a search process to your operator level roles or to your volume recruitment. And just makes life a lot easier and a lot quicker. And as everyone that works in recruitment knows, your time is really precious. And so, yeah, I've found that the talent pooling has been a real improvement for me in my space, and just, less screening, less applications to sort through, and more up-to-date data, as Jon said, about candidates as well.
Okay. And what other improvements have you seen since the implementation and the integrated solution being put in place?
Yeah, since integration with SuccessFactors, look, I think some of the main improvements have been certainly around our time to hire and our ability for recruiters to get through those roles, either be screening candidates through a lot more efficiently, or alternatively just jumping into talent pools and talent communities and hiring roles more efficiently and quicker. Just means that our recruiters then have a lot more time on their hands. Not that they then use that to go off on Google or surf the web, but although Sammy might. But no, I think it's actually more that they invest that time. They invest that time back with their candidates, so they can actually engage more in candidate relationships than what they previously were able to do. I don't think, and I think it's the same. I think we all have to be honest with ourselves in using a traditional ATS, and I've been there in the past, and recruiters, as much as they would like to say that they engage with their candidates, they're really only engaging in their preferred candidate. They're not engaging with those candidates that are second or third preferred, or that are their silver medalists that aren't right for that role but great for another role. And that's where our recruiters have more time to be able to talent pool people and be able to build those relationships.
Yeah, because I mean, you're talent pooling, let's say, all your silver medalists or your bronze medalists when you've been, or even just people who are in your shortlist, who just for reasons of time you didn't get to interview or didn't make it to that stage of the process because you'd already got your shortlist together, or your top 3 together that you were going to interview. You can then, because a talent pool is great, but you have to manage it. So you have to have that contact with those people on a sort of regular basis. I would speak to my talent pool candidates. If I know that I've got a role coming up, I'll keep in touch with them and I talk to them once every couple of weeks. And when you're operating purely from an ATS, you just don't have time to do that. You just actually don't. And the one thing I'd like to talk about as well, which is really sort of seems like a small detail, but there's a function in LiveHire that allows you to search someone's name and pull up who it is that you're looking for and their profile instantly, and it is my favourite.
And how about the hiring managers? I know you're looking at or slowly introducing hiring managers onto the platform. How has the, relationship between the recruiter and the hiring manager progressed, but also how have hiring managers started to engage on the platform, and how's that process been made easier?
Yeah, I think hiring managers are starting to see some of the benefits, certainly from some of the integrations that we've done in LiveHire with Sonru and being able to talent pool some of our bulk operator positions. But we've also started to trial it with 1 or 2 of our hiring managers, giving them access to be able to view their talent pools. We've actually given them the recruiter access initially because they're very trustworthy people. But eventually, as LiveHire developed the talent pool functionality for hiring managers to be able to access and view their own talent pools, we see that as being a really a big game changer for us, because so far the feedback has been overly positive, having hiring managers being able to go in there and just see the automatically generated profiles that the LiveHire system pulls from the 40-odd thousand people that are in our talent community against the set criteria, and for them to be able to just look at those people and then just pull them, and our recruiter being able to then message them in bulk, has been a bit of a game changer.
Yeah, and I think anytime you take what is effectively 2 weeks out of a process, the hiring manager is going to be happy, especially in, as Jon was saying before, mining can be, staffing is critical. So they're looking for, solutions that can happen as quickly as possible. And so if they're coming to me and saying, Sam, for example, I need 3 mineral processing operators, I need them to be on the ground as soon as humanly possible. And we have a really, we have a big talent pool. I can send them a short list. We can start interviewing really quickly rather than having to advertise and wait for a response.
Brilliant. Thank you. Just popped a slide up that just shows the source of effectiveness for applicants applying for jobs at Roy Hill. The stats show the best sources for hiring at Roy Hill currently, and this was actually taken a snapshot of October last month. Jon, did you want to talk us through this data and what this means for you?
Yeah, look, it simply just says to us in the month of October that we hired more people, or that source effectiveness was greater from our talent pools and our talent community than it was from, say, applicants coming through our careers website or job adverts. So yeah, obviously, lots of candidates are coming through those careers websites and job adverts, but in terms of the effectiveness for that month of October, that snapshot, yeah, it shows that our recruiters are using those talent pools and talent communities, which is great.
And that's about 60 hires out of those.
Roughly.
Yeah. Excellent. And the next slide is around a demonstration of the reduction in recruiter admin in terms of how long it's taken to fill your roles by source channel. So we can see here a dramatic decrease in time to hire for candidates that have been recruited out of the talent pool and out of the community, as opposed to job ads that have been posted on job boards.
Yeah, and look, we all know, and we're not saying that we're ever going to remove job adverts and careers website job board adverts altogether. We do know that it takes a while to recruit those roles, because you have to wait literally, a couple of weeks or so to get enough responses through to be able to shortlist and get that through to the hiring manager for them to interview. A lot of these candidates that have been pulled or that we do find in our talent community, they've either been interviewed already and they're just ready to go and ready to be hired, or alternatively, they're at least immediately available to be interviewed and considered.
Yeah.
And there was something else I wanted to say as well. So I think we've talked a lot about high volume recruitment and recruitment where, we're looking for a lot of people, but I think this works for market scarce positions as well, where, candidates are thin on the ground, because, as I said, you're effectively applying a search process to your recruitment process. And if you can identify these people who are passive candidates yourself and this makes it much easier, you can reach out to them, make them feel special, and again, reduce time to hire, because your search process is made much easier by having that talent community there.
Excellent. Now on to diversity. Why is diversity so important to Roy Hill?
Look, I think we've recognised that the mining sector is not great for diversity initially, so that's the first cab off the rank. But I think we also recognise that diversity of thought and giving opportunities to women in the resources sector is really, really important for us as a sector moving forward. So that's why I guess one of the other added benefits of the talent community solution was for us to be able to much more easily identify our diversity and numbers in the talent community and be able to actually proactively recruit towards that to improve our diversity has been important.
Okay. And I guess we're interested to hear what some of the challenges you were facing prior to the solution being implemented, and how you overcame them with the technology. If you can share some insights there.
Yeah. So on this slide here, this kind of represents what we call at Roy Hill our new to mining truck opportunity. So these are people that have never worked in mining before, and we give them the opportunity to go through our truck school and start driving our haul packs up on site. We started the program in 2016, and before I think it was September 2017. Before then, we'd hired about 60% men and 40% females into those roles. Since implementing LiveHire, that stat's completely reversed. So it's now over 60% females that we're hiring. And that's just simply because we're not putting up job advertisements. They're typically candidates that have been referred to us, or that we've proactively gone in and used search criteria to find select number of candidates. And we specifically target female candidates because we want to give them those opportunities to get into mining. So I think there's been over 150 or so people that we've brought through the program in the last 12 months.
We've done a similar thing with our Indigenous traditional owner partners as well.
Yeah, so we've done, from an Indigenous perspective as well, we work on hiring those candidates through those various programs as well. So yeah, that's and we've gone now as a company. We've increased our diversity from, and we know how challenging it is to actually change that dial from 18%. Anything upwards is difficult, but we've managed to get it to a touch over 20% now, and rising. So we hope that continues.
Yep, fantastic. Thank you. So that brings an end to our Q&A session with Jon and Sam. We've now got an opportunity to take some questions from the audience. So if you haven't had a chance to write your questions, please do so now. And I'll just quickly have a look at what we've got here. I've got a question from, okay, it was just someone saying hello, glad to hear from us today. We've had a question come through. How did you discover that the candidate experience wasn't up to the standards for Roy Hill? So maybe what was the case for change?
I think it was probably just enough upset candidates contacting us. It's pretty obvious when you get a number of phone calls on a daily, weekly basis of candidates unhappy, and also when you get your CEO receiving the same feedback from candidates directly, because people aren't shy these days to express their feelings especially to our high-profile CEO. Then you know you need to change something. And also you get the feedback from your recruiters. Recruiters who are close to the ground, like Sam is, who's expressing to you on a pretty regular basis that candidates are frustrated or they're not getting a great experience. You have to change.
Yeah. Okay. Another question here is, what was the process like for you in regards to the integration with LiveHire between yourselves and SF?
The process was really good. It was an agile kind of process. It was a process that was split up into 4 different stages or phases, and we knew what each stage was, what the rough estimates and timing of those stages were, and I think rather than it being one big flip of the switch, it probably helped the recruiters out, because by the time we had full integration, the recruiters were quite familiar with certain aspects of the system.
Excellent. Another question here, how do you accurately track candidate experience? For example, those who are unsuccessful in the process from a data perspective?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if we necessarily track it from a data perspective. But
from a data perspective, no, but we do survey all of our candidates, and the ones who are unsuccessful are often the ones who are most motivated to respond to a survey.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd say we do that using surveys, really.
Yeah, so a little bit of an insight maybe on the Candidate Experience Awards. So for those who haven't done it, I've just gone through the process. It's about a 4 or 5 month window. So you've got about 4 or 5 months to send out as many surveys as you want to send out. I've sent out over 2,000 surveys to candidates. 80% of those have been candidates that have been declined and not received an opportunity at Roy Hill. So we're getting pretty open and honest feedback. I've had a look at some of that feedback, and it's very
robust.
It's very direct feedback, but it's good because it's the survey itself is quite intense and quite lengthy. There's a lot of data that you can capture out of it in terms of even simple things like what candidates want to see more of, what do they want more out of the experience when they go through and apply for a position.
Okay. Question from Nick Novak. Have you reduced your use of labour hire services since implementing LiveHire, i.e. effectively creating your own temp desk?
From a temp perspective, not yet. From a permanent recruitment perspective, yes. you know,
we've
in the
eliminated
last,
it from a
in the
permanent
last
recruitment perspective.
couple of years, I can probably count the number of agency hires on one hand, and that's out of thousands. But from a contract temp perspective, we're probably doing more short-term employment contracts than what we were doing previously, because we can access candidates pretty quickly from that perspective. But it hasn't enabled us yet to eliminate those 1 week, 2 week temp requirements or blue-collar operator requirements up on site.
Okay. Another question from Amanda. Is there a reason why you were using LiveHire in conjunction with SF and not just using LiveHire?
Yeah.
The costs involved in doing so must be quite high.
Yeah.
How is this impacting your cost per hire?
Yeah, good question. So when we made that decision, and look, not everyone's going to be in the same boat with SuccessFactors that we are, but we were one of the first users of SuccessFactors in the country, I think 5 years or 6 years ago. And we now use every single module of SuccessFactors pretty much, I think. So we, you know, some people only use it for 1 or 2 modules, but we've got the whole suite. And when you consider that, the actual recruitment module isn't that expensive when you've bought the entire package and you've been such a long time customer, and we've obviously got agreements in place where it's not a huge impost to either switch it on or switch it off. So we've decided to keep it in place, also because it allows us from a robustness perspective to be able to launch the requisitions in SuccessFactors and still have all those org charts embedded in the system from an approvals perspective, and it allows us also to then integrate all the onboarding and new hire data straight into SAP and our payroll team.
Okay. Let me just... this is a question from Marion. Which ATS system were you using before making the switch to LiveHire, and how did you decide which candidates to transfer onto your new database?
Well, we were using SuccessFactors, which, as Jon alluded to in the last answer, we still use. We've just integrated that module, that recruitment module, with LiveHire. And with regards to how we got our talent community, we basically invited everybody, I think just 70,000 people whose details we had in that ATS, and how many responded?
From memory, within
35,000 in 2 weeks.
Yeah, in 10 days, you had about 30,000.
And that was important to us because those were candidates that were up to 5 years old in terms of the data set. So we immediately had a refreshed data set of profiles that were now all live profiles with up-to-date current information.
A question from Will. Does LiveHire auto send surveys to unsuccessful applicants? It doesn't. It's very much recruiter driven. So when a recruiter makes a decision to inform a unsuccessful candidate, they do so directly through the platform. But it also allows them to then immediately talent pool those that they know they might consider for future opportunities.
One thing, I'll just go back to that question before about the cost aspect of LiveHire. Yeah, obviously there is a cost. There is a cost to the SuccessFactors recruitment module. Either way you look at it, it doesn't matter how well you can negotiate and how many modules you've got of the program. But I also looked at the LiveHire talent community cost, and look, it's not unreasonable, the LiveHire talent community solution. I'm not going to say it's very cheap or expensive, Yvonne. That's for you to organise with your clients. But in terms of the cost benefit, we immediately found, for example, an information technology or architect candidate in the first 2 weeks of going live with the talent community, and that was just purely because we were able to search that system and that talent community so much more effectively than what we ever could in a traditional ATS system, and that saved us immediately, $25,000 in an agency cost. We were literally about to hit the button and go live with an agency search. So yeah, your return on investment easily happens from that perspective.
A question from Neha, apologies for the pronunciation. Can you please give specific details on how you managed to target skilled employees to diversify Roy Hill using LiveHire?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing, I guess it's difficult to understand if you haven't actually sat down and played with LiveHire, but one thing that you can do is conduct a search of your talent community, specifying who and what you are looking for. So you can control for, you have a number of filters, and you can control for experience, background, location, gender, all those things you can control for with your filters, and then you can come up, as Jon was saying, with that live data, with those live profiles that are up to date, and you can message them, you can contact them personally. This is if they have opted in to your talent community. If they haven't and they're just in the general talent community, you can message them and ask them if they're okay with being contacted, much like you would on any other sort of talent community. So when you've got those, it's really simple. You've got all those filters there. You've got city, suburb, relationship, source, channel, first connected, country, and previous ratings that you might have given people that are, or that other recruiters in your team might have given people that they themselves have interviewed.
Perfect. Another question from Will. Have you been able to rewrite the algorithms in LiveHire to have them suggest applicants for diverse talent pools? So I'm happy to answer that one. So LiveHire does give you the ability, it does actually suggest candidates into your job vacancies that you've currently got live. It uses the information that you've populated in your job vacancy to I guess do some of that heavy lifting for the recruiter, and search throughout your community and the wider LiveHire ecosystem for candidates that meet the requirements of that job.
And does the same for talent pools too, Yvonne?
Absolutely. And then similarly for your talent pools, it operates in the same way. So when you build your talent pool, you set your criteria for what you're looking for, and then as a recruiter, you can look at the suggested matches that LiveHire has made for you, and you can then decide who you want to be able to talent pool.
And one thing I'll add as well is when it starts to give you suggestions, there is, I'm guessing, an algorithm going on in the background that if you go tick, 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 it starts to send you more of the same.
Yeah.
So it's taking note of who you're excluding.
Yeah, and the one thing that I've noticed in the talent pools versus the suggested candidates for the vacancies, I think LiveHire is obviously working on the algorithm for the suggested candidates for vacancies, because I must admit it's not entirely 100% accurate. But what I will say is that in the talent pool functionality of LiveHire, I've been really impressed with the accuracy of the suggested candidates.
Yeah.
So, for example, we look for diesel fitters and mechanics. When you put in that criteria into your talent pool, the matches are pretty much bang on accurate. You're not going to get any other people other than those candidates being suggested by the talent pool system.
Good to hear. A question from Jon. So, how important was it for the business to embrace short to long-term workforce planning in order to develop your talent community and your talent pipelines?
Yeah, look, this is I guess an emerging kind of thing for us, Jon, and that's around ongoing kind of workforce planning. For us at the moment, where we are in the business today is really about just being close to our hiring leaders and particularly our general managers and our leaders who are really at the forefront of what's coming in the pipeline, and meeting with them on a regular basis to understand what are the pressure points in the future. And we've already started to map out some of our technical positions that we will require in the future, and starting to build those talent pools. But I think the whole kind of talent management workforce planning thing is still part of an evolving feast for us here.
So a follow-up question from Jon as well. Any tips on how to get the business to consider workforce planning?
I don't know. What's a tip? I don't know. Maybe tell them that I think it's just about communicating with them and letting them know that that you might be struggling in a particular area to source candidates for, and sitting down with them and just talking about the strategy of, if we can't get these people for what we can afford, or if we can't get these people full stop, what else do we need to be looking at? What other tips do we need to be considering and thinking about when it comes to planning for that future workforce?
And I think it's also about stressing the need to change from a solution that's reactive to one that's proactive.
Yeah,
and most managers will understand the sense in that.
Yeah.
Because when you're approaching that kind of situation in a reactive way, it's always going to cost you more money.
Yeah. And I suppose to one of the earlier points made about the productivity, the business impact, the immediate business impact, and translating that to, I guess, an operational, productivity and dollar amount.
Exactly.
About the impact.
Yep.
At what point, this is a question from Marion, at what point do you engage your hiring managers in the recruitment process, and do you allow them access to LiveHire to check vacancy status, talent pool snapshot summaries, etc.?
Look, the hiring managers engaged from the very beginning, and I think, as we were saying, candidate interface is wholly and solely LiveHire, but hiring managers will engage with the recruitment process still through SuccessFactors because they still have access to that system. And so, yes, in SuccessFactors they can check, roughly sort of check, not in anywhere near as much detail, but they can roughly check on the progress of the recruit. And we would, obviously, because I personally, and I know most of the recruiters, we deal with managers in remote locations. We do need some kind of system whereby they can get involved on their end and we can sort of see what each other are doing. But yeah, they would have a look at, shortlists through SuccessFactors, and we would be very connected with them throughout the whole process.
Yeah. So the way that the integration works is that any candidate information, if you have say 100 applicants in your vacancy, those 100 will be replicated over in SuccessFactors at the same stages and at the same statuses. So there might be 80 declined, 10 at shortlist, 10 at interview stage. Those will be completely mirrored in the SuccessFactors system. So hiring managers who've been used to using that SuccessFactors system are still using that for that purposes. But as I mentioned before, earlier in the call, we are hoping to then be able to give certain hiring leaders who might be heading up talent pools for that purpose, giving them that talent pool functionality is going to be important for us.
Another question from Marion. What does the process of posting a job, reviewing and approving candidates, and then moving them through the interview funnel look like?
Yeah, so probably similar to what I just mentioned there. The raising of the rec and the approval process is done in SF. That's how our business is led, and that's what they've been used to. As soon as that role is approved, though, in SuccessFactors, within seconds it's live and open in LiveHire through the integration portal. So the recruiter can then immediately go into LiveHire and start publishing it out of LiveHire. So that's where they advertise the role and publish the role by Broadbean if they need to advertise it. If they don't, they can go straight to a talent pool and start inviting candidates to apply for that role. And as I said before, once you change the statuses of the candidate in LiveHire, it's immediately changed within seconds in SuccessFactors.
And we should say LiveHire still has those same funnels that you're used to in an ATS. Yeah. So you still got your, applied, application received, shortlist, interview. So you're moving candidates through much in the same way that you would do in any other ATS.
Yep.
Another question. What reports can we run on recruiting metrics, jobs and candidates, and are these standard reports? So I'm happy to answer this one. So we work very closely with our clients to provide a suite of reports that address their KPIs and their reporting metrics that they require. We do have standard monthly reports that we also provide that basically give you an indication of the health of your talent community, give you an indication of recruiter activity, and it helps you track candidate engagement, as well as how your talent pools are looking, etc. Further to that, there's in-dash analytics as well, that particularly across the job vacancies, which gives you an indication of how your jobs are tracking individually and then both at the higher level. So for the recruiting manager, can have an oversight on how all the vacancies are progressing, are unsuccessful candidates being notified, and that feedback loop being closed. Being able to demonstrate and show you how where all your quality hires are actually coming from in terms of source data, etc. I think that might be the last of the questions. There's a couple of thanks, Jon and Sam, from the audience. I certainly would echo that. Look, if there aren't any other questions, we're probably coming close to time. We thank you very much for attending today. We will be sharing this recording of this webinar with the audience and others that had registered but were unable to attend. Thanks again, Jon and Sam, and everyone enjoy your day.